We're very honoured to have been joined by a man who last sat in this studio telling us some very interesting things about roads, engineering, a host of things. He's just a mine of information and has done so many things in the past, it's almost impossible to know where to start. Former champion sports commentator, known as a bit of a heartthrob on television. Later on, he was spokesman to the president under President Kufuor. He's been a minister of information. He's been general secretary of the New Patriotic Party, and he is our guest. Kojo and me, possibly with some other people even chipping in a bit later on in the Kweku Sechiado studio. Yes, it's Kwabena Agyei Adjepong, and we say good morning to you, sir.
It's such a pleasure to be here once again. I haven't been here for quite some time.
For quite a while. We thought that you were avoiding us, so we're very...
Not really. I'm avoiding my senior in infancy.
Oh, it's MOBA time again. Tell us what you got up to in those days, or is it a bit? Is it possibly the source of some lawsuits?
No. It's all right.
We're trained to be respectful of us, and a lot of discipline.
A lot of discipline.
Imposed on us.
Imposed being the operative. You're so tactful. You mean probably hit over the head with it. I loved your recent post about the generations of MOBA in your own family. Your father being, of course, an old boy of Infansa Prim, you being an old boy of Infansa Prim, and now you have a son who is also an old boy of Infansa Prim. Yes. What do you think Infansa Prim gave you that has informed the active political life that you lead today?
I think Infansa Prim give me everything. I would say everything. My personality, the way I behave, the way I relate to people. I've always believed in the boarding school system. You go to Form 1 and you have former ministers' children, you have farmers' children, you have everybody, different tribes. But there's a certain collegiality belonging to one dormitory in one court. Lokatswaiza lower dormitory. And you live with it for life. And we are friends for life. And of course, some of the discipline tactics were a bit harsh, but it toughens you. You know, in Infansa Prim, you get up, you have to lay your beds, you have to go and lay a senior's bed, you have to go and wash the toilet, you have to know how to sweep.
So your exit is conditional on how clean your bed was, your dorm, your course.
Everything. I mean, if you are deducted marks because even your trunk is not well organized.
You had
you can't go to town that Saturday.
Don't go to town that Saturday. You can't go and visit, you can't go and buy Muscatella.
That's right, Muscatella. That's my favorite drink.
My gosh.
So it makes you a man, and I think a lot of my character was developed from Infansa Prim. When I learnt Ga there, strangely. I learnt all my Ga in Infansa Prim. So it's a wonderful place to be.
Now, perhaps we'll be able to return a little bit to the subject of education a bit later on in the interview. But now, talking about the hard work that you've been doing, which is one of the reasons why you've not been able to join us in the studio for a number of months, right from even before the official campaign began for Dr. Bawumia, Team Bawumia hitting the road, the launch of the manifesto, anything like that, you've continued doing what I think you've been doing for the better part of 25 years now.
That's right.
You have gone out there and you have been campaigning for the parties. Things have now reached a peak. I think probably at the time when you were starting off with the campaigning work, nobody would have rated the prospects of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And now, on the eve of the election, or near eve, 3 days to go, it seems the race is neck and neck. Indeed, if you believe the polls that we have just been hearing about on the Asaase Breakfast Show, a majority of people actually putting Dr. Bawumia ahead. Serious questions being raised in the lead up to the 7th of December, though, allegations emerging from the woodwork about Dr. Bawumia's entourage, shall we say, members of his family, trying to suggest that he is not as incorruptible as he has presented himself in the past, or he doesn't have the leadership qualities that we would want, ideally, a Ghanaian leader to have. And John Dramani Mahama of the NDC presenting himself as a chastened person who has learned from his political experience. He made mistakes last time round, and having learned from the mistakes, he wants to come back because he has a good agenda for Ghanaians for the future. What do you make of those profiles of the two leading candidates?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that if you look at the way Dr. Bawumia has conducted himself and his campaign, mind you, he was elected on November 4th, 8 clear months after John Mahama was elected. He did nothing in those 8 months. Bawumia set about his work very clearly, well laid out plan till December 7th. Very meticulous, hard worker. Started his first round of visitations to the 16 regional capitals. And I've been around politics from Edubuahene's time. And I've never seen a presidential candidate organize his campaign in this meticulous manner. He goes to every region before he meets the party people, what he calls the Bawumia Connect. Sometimes it's the Youth Connect, it's the Constituency Connect. He does what he calls stakeholder engagements. It's never happened where you bring the clergy, the Islamic scholars and clergy and the Christians and the chiefs and the artisans, the workers, the teachers, depending on where you are, miners, drivers, garages, fitters, has a public forum with them, open public forum where he allows them to ask questions from A to Z. And I think that prepared him a lot before he even put together his manifesto team. And so you can see some of these things reflecting in some of his new proposals, because he went on a listening tour, touching base with the country. And then during those meetings, you also have time for the market women, go to public places, enter people's houses, have chats with them. It's exciting to be at home in a village somewhere and the vice president drops in and pops in to have a chat with you, and the taxi ranks, the market areas. And he endeared himself, and people love taking selfies with him. He's a fairly young man. He's a very strident walker. He's got a lot of vitality.
He has an awful lot of energy.
Much energy.
Well, I must say that was one thing that really struck me right from the start of his campaign, because there had been a suggestion from a previous visit to Kumasi before the official campaign launch that it was going to be very presidential. Yeah. He would be riding around in open-topped vehicles, waving to the masses from on high. And the first thing he did was put on his sneakers and go walking through places in the eastern region, shaking hands of people in Pragyas who looked completely stunned. The vice president has a very high-risk approach from a security point of view, and could have backfired.
It was a nightmare for the security. And sometimes he takes off in a different direction and everybody has to run after him.
But you would say,
because he's seen somebody that struck a chord and he wants to say hi to the person. He's got empathy. Maybe it's his background. He's got the special feeling for people with disabilities and the least privileged in society. And he went about it in a meticulous manner. After the first round, the manifesto team was together, worked towards, had time to come back, interface with the manifesto team, then go and launch his manifesto earlier than those in opposition. He's also combining all this with his job as vice president. There are times he has to dash back to Accra to attend to official business. So you look at all that, then outdoor his running mate in Kumasi, then move on to the constituency visits. And by the time I left him, he had done 269.
I was just going to say, where were we up to in the constituency count? 269 out of the 276.
When I left, but I think he's covered the 276 now.
Oh, gosh.
Because even in the Volta region where we had to leave, there was an emergency in Accra he had to attend to. So Sal, Biakuye and Buem, we couldn't handle that particular day. We were supposed to do it because he had to attend to some emergency in Accra. So he's been able to cover that. I don't think his opponent has covered anything close to 100. And you can see they were not very organized. One day you hear he's in the north, then he's in western. But he took his time. If he's in Volta, Oti, Ahafo, Bron, covered everything, regulated. And the constituency connects were also quite similar to what he did initially. Now he's having more meetings with party people. And he was so well received, and it shows a capacity to do hard work. And that's what I like about him, the determination. Now, I've been campaigning for years, as you said. Sometimes you could see that this man must be tired. What is energizing him? His voice is running up. The vocal cords are straining. And he'll get up the next morning and says, Kwabena, we go. He was so determined. And I think that eventually hard work pays. And that's how come from February, when the polls were not very good and everybody was worried, he's been able to eat up the gap and is now just ahead of his. All the polls, even those that used to send some weird polls, are now putting him ahead of John Mahama. So I have never been a believer in polls. I mean, that is, for me, that's personal.
Really?
I believe that elections, once they are counted, and that's when I call it an election. There's no better poll than the election itself. So in Ghana, elections are always going to be close. Even during Rawlings's era, when our hands were tied behind us, we could only manage 56% and that kind of stuff. So the two big parties, the MPP, which is from the UP tradition, and now the NDC, which has taken over the CPP, essentially. I've always said, from the political experience I've gathered in this country, the NDC has a core 43-44%. The MPP has a core 47-48%, sometimes 49%. So anytime the MPP wins, there's a bigger margin, because I do believe it's a bigger party. When we lose, it's because there are internal issues, and our people can be swollen-headed, especially when we are in power. The fighting over parliamentary positions and the fallout from these primaries. Fortunately, this year we haven't seen much of that. A few hot spots, but not much of that. We've had a decent primary, and so I'm very confident that this is going to be a good election for the NPP.
So you're sounding bullish about the chances of NPP, fewer problems of factionalism that have perhaps dogged the party, notably in 2008.
That's right.
The 17 candidate election.
I was the youngest of the lot.
And you were the youngest of the lot.
At the time.
Even then he figured in the... He was as a mere stripling, even then figuring in NPP history. So you've spoken to the energy of the man, his perseverance, his determination, even his fantastic time management. He's even been able to work in international trips to the campaign, and to an NDC that has taken a rather laid-back approach to this, possibly because they were so far ahead in the polls, and possibly...
I think they were so complacent that, because we...
Yes, but there is also the benefit of experience, sir. Yeah. So you will say that this is because John Mahama is now a seasoned politician. He's done virtually every level of governance in our country. He knows the political system inside out. And the NDC is a formidable political machinery. Right. Everybody would be mistaken in taking it for granted. So there must be something that is informing his decision to not be quite so out and about in the constituencies, but to leave it to other people in the party to do.
I think there were some of them who were even saying that if we elect Dr. Bawumia, they don't need to campaign. And now they've been forced to campaign. I think they were very complacent, and they were hanging on the fact that, there were economic difficulties. We all know what's happened with COVID and the global crunch and how it impacted really harsh on Ghanaians. So they were just building on that and thinking that they don't need to do anything. And there's also the routine of every 8 years there's going to be a change. So I think you add all that, and then they had started even having their cabinet reshuffles. They were so confident. But Dr. Bawumia worked hard, took the battle to them. And I think a lot depends on he himself. He's got a very nice national profile. He's got interpersonal skills. He's a nice person, very warm-hearted. He always has a nice word for people. And I think he's used his platform as vice president and in the party as running mate to good effect. He's been able to build a strong coalition within the party. There are no blocks against him in the party. And in fact, he did something which is counter to what we've been used to. I mean, in 1992, when Professor Dubois won, those of us, the young ones who were supporting Dr. Kwame Safoedu, he took us to Templars Lane in Airport, where Professor Dubois used to stay, and said, look, Prof, I want to congratulate you. These are my boys. And that's how I got close to Professor Dubois. Wow. Normally, those who lose go and congratulate the winner. In 2007, I went to Nima to congratulate Nana Akufo-Addo, and the rest of us, the 16, did likewise. With Dr. Bawumia, he didn't wait. before you are aware, he's in your house, you know. So
Kwabena Agyepong.
Yeah, he went to everybody, tried to let them know that this battle is over. It was a very tough campaign. Yes. Some hard jabs were thrown from all sides, you know. But the way he handled it, carried himself, you know, he was able to get everybody to feel a part of it. And all of us have played various roles to support his campaign. And so there's relative harmony in the party. Of course, there's always, when you have been in power for 8 years, the grassroots feeling a certain level of alienation from the government, and sometimes some, in quotes, pig-headed appointees don't treat party people the way they deserve to be treated, and so it causes a lot of disaffection. But we've worked hard on that, appeal to them using forums such as yours to let them know that the party is bigger. It's the elephant that we are all serving, and you never know when your time will come. So the fact that I wasn't part of the 8 years of Akufo-Addo's regime doesn't mean I should step back. I feel it a duty as a patriot of the New Patriotic Party to come out. So I want to encourage all party past executives, polling station executives, even those who were somehow worked out of the delegate system, who are unhappy and all that. There are quite a number of that. And we've been encouraging them. Look, this is our party. And no party can take care of everybody in 8 years. And again, if you look at the history of Ghana, it's been, 67 years? If you take Mr. Kufuor's 8 years, and Nanado's 8 years, it's 16. You add Buzia 2.5, it's only 8.5. People even claim that we were behind the Ankara Kutuka coup. So you add those 3 years, it's still 21 out of 67. I do believe that the country deserves to have the UP tradition for an elongated period, and I think we are better managers of the economy. We create a feel-good factor when we are in power, and if we have more time, and that's why I think the Ghanaians will trust Dr. Bawumia, because he's a strategic candidate. He's also, I would say, is a historic one. We've never elected a Muslim and a Northern Muslim as the top of the ticket. We've always had them as number 2, and he won in a historic way, because 61% may not be too big because of some of the figures we've seen, but Adubuahin didn't get that at the first time. Kufuor did not get that at the first time. Akufo-Addo did not get that at the first attempt. So historically, for a first-time contestant, that is the biggest margin he won. So he's got a broad coalition of support behind him, and I think that works in his favor.
So you can tell that Kwabena Agyepong likes this man and also thinks he is sound, more importantly, having observed him at very close quarters and worked with him at very close quarters. And I'm sure Kojo will have some important questions to ask you in a minute, but I wanted to ask you about the elephant in the room. You said there hasn't been that kind of factionalism that we've seen in the NPP in previous run-ups to election. There is, of course, the small question of Alan Tremating and his decision to break away and form the Movement for Change and Afrafranto. The suggestion that this is somehow not being thought of as seriously as we should do, because the polling puts him a distance 4th in terms of votes, but the suggestion that he may particularly have a big impact on the NPP's vote in the Ashanti region.
Well, people can speculate the way they want, but you see, in politics in this country, especially this political tradition, it's like a spirit. You leave it, and you most likely leave alone. You most likely, but you won't take any significant chunk outside. We've seen it before. In 1995-96, everybody thought Kwame Pianim was going to be the president. You know, once he took a risk of going to court to look at his validity to stand, and that was it. And he didn't really leave the party, but his influence waned. You understand? Yes, every vote counts. So nobody is taking for granted the fact that he was a senior member of our party, has been a founding member of the party, and has been a cabinet minister cumulatively for over 12 years. So, yes. But at the end of the day, I knew that by the time we get close to the election, Ghanaians know that the country is walking on very tight rope. Nobody's going to waste a vote. They know that it's a battle between Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and former president. And that's where the votes are going to go. If you look at the polls, like I said, I don't like polls very much. But early in the year, there was a huge chunk of undecideds. Now that has really thinned out. It has thinned out completely. And by 7th, you hardly find people voting for any of these other candidates. And strangely, this is the first time in a very long time that we haven't seen the other parties really do anything. And I mean, times past, you see the CPP, the Heritage Party, the National Independence Party,
PNC,
the PNC, and others. Even in recent times, Indum's PPP and all that, you could see they were doing something. Now, I haven't seen any major political movements around from these. Apart from the 2 independent candidates you've talked about, but I think that they won't make enough to be able to push this into a runoff.
Kojo?
Yeah, I'm curious. You talked about the fact that he's a Muslim.
Yes.
It's not an elephant in any room, but it is a fact.
It's a fact.
That for Ghana as well as a country, it is a factor. How has he been able to deal with that, even in his campaigning? And what sort of acceptance are you getting from the Christian community? And we have some rabid Christians as well.
Of course.
How's that been?
Well, I think Dr. Bawumia himself, his background has helped. I mean, if you look at him at childhood, his mother was a Christian before he married the father and then had to convert into Islam.
Right.
And the family is a large family. They were 19, now only 17 alive. And 9 are Christians, 8 are Muslims. So it's a household that is used to the two.
Both sides.
That's right.
It's a Christmas family.
So he's somebody who's been comfortable around Christians.
Right.
And since he's been the vice president, he's had a very harmonious relationship with the church. I mean, I can take my church, for example. I mean, he surprised me by coming to my hometown for my mother's 10th anniversary. He didn't tell me.
Wow.
Woon to me who told me 24 hours. And I had just prepared for some,
small
after
group.
just small 50 people, 4 months, I had lost the election and all my funds were gone. Only to be told that the vice president was coming. I said, what? I have to increase it to 150. Where's the money coming from? But the next day he was there with a wife and a big delegation, and it's a Catholic church in Asokore Mampo. And after the event, I mean, he looked at the floor was dusty and all that, and he said, look, since he's here, he wants to help with the building project. And he delivered on his promise. And today if you go there, it's nicely tiled. They've used the resources well. This is a Muslim supporting a Christian church, and he's done many places.
Yeah.
I mean, to talk about the mosques, that's a completely different matter. If you go and see the mosque in Prang, in the Brong-Ahafo region, many places I've been with him, they give the testimony. Sometimes he's forgotten. I mean, he gave people $1,000, he has forgotten. He sent people to Cuba to become doctors, he has forgotten. It's like that. When you do good, he's someone who shares what he has, what God has blessed him with people. It's a very sharing character. So that has really brought the Christian, everywhere we've been, on their own, the Christians will come and say, we want to pray for him. So you see pictures of them surrounding him praying. It's not organized. It's normally
spontaneous.
Yeah. Normally we have the Christians give the first prayer and then the Muslims will close it up. But even after that, they say, we want to pray for him. And it's gone on and on around the whole country, all constituencies. So he's built this very good rapport, and it's something he said he will continue when he becomes president. And so, of course, there are a few hardliners who are going around saying that it's a battle between Christians and Muslims and that they shouldn't vote for him. We're a majority Christian country, so why should the minority lead us? But the fact that the MPP is majority Christian, majority Akan, shows that we are inclusive. We believe that if you are competent, and it doesn't matter whether you are Krobo or Ewe or Nzima, you have the chance. So that election is significant because it broke a certain mold and disarmed the NDC of their major weapon, propaganda weapon, which they've used to browbeat us all over. Hey, they go into the Zongos, these are Ashantis. They don't even say Akans. These are Asante 4 party.
They don't like Northerners.
They say that, and they can easily recall Buzia's Alliance Compliance Order. And the old ones who lived in those days still have the overhang. But now we are fighting the NDC in their territory. I mean, over close to 500 Zongos, we never win any of them. I'm not saying we're going to win them, but even if we are able to do 30, 35, 40%, that is the victory for us. Because that is taking the chunk of their stronghold.
Right.
And I do believe the work and the Zongo Development Fund, I mean, that idea, and the work that it has done, the projects, over 300 schools, and then also restoring the Arabic teachers' paid, which was cancelled by Mahama, and all that. It shows that somebody who cares for, people. So I think that will work very well. And I'm not saying we're going to win the Zongos, because they have been traditionally NDC, but there will be some swing.
A movement towards equalization.
Towards equalization. And that movement will be enough for him to win the election. Because on his own, he's built a certain core. It's not for nothing that, first-time aspirant can win the support of our parliamentary party. Majority, 103, 104, were virtually moving around campaigning with him. That shows that he's somebody who's been able to build rapport. The constituency chairman, the regional chairman, they all support him. Hardly see anybody, So, yes, one senior person decided to go independent his way, but I would say that predominantly every one of us, other than him, is supporting Dr. Bawumia's campaign in various ways, and that has been healthy and good for our party.
He's been a remarkable kind of magnet, drawing all areas of the party, all interest groups in the party together. You spoke earlier there, Kwabena Agyepong, about eating into NDC territory and how you expect this to work in relation to, say, Zongos in particular. The NDC is equally eating into NPP territory. It was very noticeable after the remarkable 15-day tour of the region recently by the Vice President. No sooner had he left than Johnson Asiedu Nketia arrived in town. President Mahama, former President Mahama, has been all over the shop, but particularly in Kumasi in the past few days, and they are talking about passing the 30% mark. That's their target in Ashanti region. Do you really think that Ashanti will hold
that
up?
30% that they talk about? That's why we're going to eat into that 30%. Because a lot of the votes they get, they know where they get it from. We know where they get the votes from. Publicly, maybe for strategic reasons, I would not say it.
Well, we know Asaase is one place.
Yeah, so a place like Asaase is a large constituency. But we have got a remarkable parliamentary candidate there, Manaf, who's a local boy. And added to the fact that we have Bawumia on top of the ticket, I can guarantee you that will eat a chunk of that vote. So I don't think they are going to do anywhere near 25% that they normally do in Ashanti, because we are going to eat that vote, some of it. We're going to eat into that vote. We are fighting them on their terrain, even places like Bono East where we were weak. It reveals that there are certain constituencies that are likely to fall our way this time around. So it's going to be an interesting election. And we are confident that because he's a candidate like no other we've had in the past, and apart from bringing his own skill set, which is remarkable. He's got strong personal integrity. I just heard the statement that you made. I didn't quite get it. People think that Bawumia is not, he may look soft on the outside, but I can tell you, when he decides, I've worked with him closely. I know myself. I'm a tough cookie, so I know when somebody is tough and can do things. The fact that he's kind and he's the vice president. He's not the president. People talk like that. Mahama should know better than most. He has occupied the two positions and knows the difference. It's a big sea of difference between vice president and president. I quite remember his what's his name, spokesperson, John Jinapo, saying that he was just being asked to go and open daycare centers. I don't know whether I remember that interview that he had when he was vice president, that he was being Mills was shutting him out of serious business.
Just sent him to commission a daycare center here with that.
That's right. So I'm not trying to degrade the position of vice president, because by his own actions, Dr. Bawumia has elevated that position.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, though.
Yes,
because
he has, because he has
he's made it a proper,
serious,
worthy
prominent position.
Yeah.
Because yes, you can credit the president for allowing him the latitude,
right,
but also the fact that he really worked well to fill that space that was afforded him by leading many initiatives that have changed the lives of Ghanaians. I mean, things that we take for granted. This mobile money interoperability. We may take it for granted, but if you are in China and your wife calls you and says that the light's about to go off, and you can go on an app and transfer money and get your lights back on, those are things you forget. We go around, the cocoa farmers are telling us that these days people can attack them because their money is on their phone. Because those days, once the pickpockets hear that they've been paid, they ransack them.
We're talking about peace of mind technology.
Peace of mind technology, and many things that are happening. I mean, today, when you got all our medical records digitized, and the fact that we've built a solid ecosystem where your Ghana card becomes the anchor. It's linked to your phone, it's linked to your SNIT, it's linked to your tax and all that. That is very important, because today, wherever you go that you key in your phone number, because it's linked to your Ghana card, you key in your birth, your information comes. And that's what we need. We are trying to build a solid, modernized ecosystem that brings everybody into the formal economy. And coming into office where only about 5% had financial inclusion bank accounts, today we have transformed the Momo account into a form of bank account. And now about 80% of the adult population have Momo. So a lot of things have changed. I mean, you can pay people straight. I mean, in those days, if you had a call from your village that a relative was sick, you are now looking for money, look for someone to take a vehicle. Today, you just have to just send it. You know, life has improved. You know, and these are things that touch the lives of Ghanaians. So a lot of policies that he has promoted has touched. I mean, look at the drones. Look at the joke that the NDC were making, that they're going to use it to take photos of women in the bathrooms. That's how negative they are. Anytime you want to bring up something that would inure to the benefit of Ghanaians, they try to wish it away. But today, people's lives have been saved. We are right now having the best health delivery, zone delivery system medically around the world.
Yeah, the biggest.
Even I'm told that from planes during the school's exams, and there was a flood, they had to take the drone to deliver school papers for them to take the examination. So when you have someone who's got such a strong vision, who thinks into the future, like Jun Shekan, and that's our motto.
Oh, but he didn't go to Infantsipin.
You know, so, you know, I think that he's got a deeper understanding between the two of what the world is likely to be in the future. And most Ghanaians will trust their future to Dr. Bawumia. He's shown some meticulousness about what he wants to, where he wants to get Ghana to, you know, and I think that is very good. The kind of comments we heard from chiefs, ordinary people about digitization, people were making fun in Accra, but you go there, they appear to understand it more because it benefits them in their daily lives. So some of these things are important, and I think he's won the heart of Ghanaians, even school children. His name just drifts off their tongue, you know. So,
I was going to say another very fetching thing about the pictures of him on the campaign trail, his ability to relate to children, and there are no votes in that. So you can't say that if he goes up to a child and wants to pose for photos in the expectation of getting a vote out of them. The suggestion, though, unmistakably, as you said, somebody who is a unifier, has been able to draw all the parts of the NPP together with remarkable remarkable harmony. Everybody focused on what needs to be done. The people who didn't want to join it distanced themselves and removed themselves from the argument. And he is obviously a thinker. He comes from a distinguished academic background. He has notably distinguished himself as far back as when he was research assistant to the governor of the Bank of Ghana, being plucked from the ranks of academia after doing his PhD.
That's when I got to know him more, because I was press secretary to the president at the time. So anytime Governor Akwa will come with the IMF team to the castle, the secretary will sit in there. And he always will come. That's how we got close, got to know ourselves. There. But one thing I find, which is a bit more personal to him, is his empathy, his care for the underprivileged. His work with Father Campbell, with the soup kitchens, and the street children, and then the Wager Leprosarium. When you go there with him, and I've been with him a number of occasions, he normally has his birthday there, lunch, and the way it's tough for some of us, when you're following him, because he will pick them up with ease, and then you are struggling because this mindset,
the mind thing,
and it comes to him naturally. I mean, there's this young kid. I think they were 2-1, lost their lives because in some parts of the country they think that if you have this disease,
there's witchcraft or something.
Fortunately they were able to bring her down, had about 3 operations, but now the kid is in Italy in a specialist operations, all arranged by Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. So I think that when you have such a heart, he's a good-natured person. He means well, and that's what we need: public-spirited individuals running our country.
We're going to say it again. I'm going to re-emphasize this, but is he tough enough? Does he have that? The streak that is required to be president to make the hard decisions.
I think from what I've seen with him, he's tough enough. He's tough enough. I think, see, what people do not understand, I've worked at the presidency before, and there's always this very touchy relationship between the president and the vice. And I was very close to Aliu Mahama, and Ascofor's press secretary. I know, and Bawumia, naturally is a very respectful, humble person.
Genuinely humble.
Genuinely, that's how he is. Very humble, very respectful. So he intensely respects the president. It doesn't mean he cannot disagree with him. He can do so respectfully. And I do believe that he's firm enough. I've had enough discussions, and there are things he believes in. Some people even thought that he was throwing the president under the bus in UPSA. It was not. He defended the record of this government because it's got a good record to defend. Of course, there are difficulties. We all know there are areas that we could have done better, But when we came out so openly, even with his view on what do they call that? LGB, whatever they call it.
LGBTQI+, yes.
Which I side with him, although I'm a bit of a, when I say middle of the road, I don't believe in criminalizing them,
right,
but
so
I don't believe in
on how to deal with the issue.
Say it again.
You're a bit more questioning how to deal with the
issue. So I think he's firm. I mean, there were people who thought that, that was a stark departure from what others were perceiving. But at the end of the day, this is what he believes in. He thinks that it's not in our culture, it's not in our religion, it's not in our values. So it's something that we cannot support and should not be allowed. And we would fight for our values as a country. We would stand firm at whatever cost to the nation. So when somebody comes out like that, and he said that repeatedly everywhere, so he's a very tough cookie. And I'm very sure that many people will be surprised at some of the tough decisions he's going to make when he takes over, especially about slashing the government and downsizing the government and introducing more professionalism and meritocracy to the public services. Those are areas I agree with, because those are the platforms I campaign on. I think the public services have been overly politicized. There are certain technical organizations that people go there, grow and learn, and although the president has the capacity or the authority to appoint the top, there should be little interference with the operational people in there. And those are things that I think we will see a very different presidency with him.
Okay.
I wanted to ask about that in relation to whether you call it the character thing, whether you call it the politician thing, and what you said about Dr. Bawumia presenting a plan for moving forward. As you said, the deeper thinker, it would seem, his extensive knowledge about a range of subject areas.
Right.
Very interesting idea that I think this is our first economist, who may be a first economist as our president, and we know about the breadth of interest of economists. The point has been made by other economists, notably Professor Peter Korte and Professor Godfred Bokbin, that both candidates for the two major parties going into this election have promised a wealth of things on the level of payments. In the case of the NPP and its commitments, some of those commitments have already begun to roll out. For example, the promise of extending free dialysis, that has already begun from the beginning of this month. It remains to be seen whether it can be sustained. A lot of promises being made on the basis of spending that inevitably will have to be done at a time when we are just emerging from an extended credit facility program, and we're going to have to knuckle down and focus on growth, making things, making money as a country. How likely do you think Dr. Bawumia is to be able to actually deliver on many of the promises that he's making to Ghanaian people? Because it's a very expensive manifesto.
No, I don't think it's many promises per se. I think he talks about imposing order and discipline. He talks about having value for money for government procurement, because a lot of our debt is buried in graft. I mean, look, it's a fact. I mean, you see projects like the ones that Muhammad touts about Dubai, Kumasi, when they did the runway. I've worked on the runway as a young engineer in 1991. You can't possibly say you've done an overlay for $27 million. In fact, as General Secretary, I wrote them a letter. The minister did not even acknowledge receipt, because I've walked that runway. I know the length of both the Kotoka and Kumasi runways, because as civil engineer with highways, we worked on it when we were doing the asphalted concrete relaying. A lot of projects in this country. That's why I'm not particularly a fan of the procurement authority. In that one, I even voiced it when President Kufuor was putting it up. Of course, he was the boss.
Exactly.
Because I don't think it has served this country very, very much, because the cost of doing even roads in this country are the most expensive around the world, and we don't back it with a maintenance program. And in our manifesto, Dr. Bawumia is insisting that as of now, if you look at the density of road network for a country of 35 million and the acreage that we have as a country, it's one of the most impressive around Africa. So we may not need to do new roads, but to maintain the network that we have, that is crucial. So maintenance culture is crucial. In Ghana, we are quick to do new things, never to be maintained or allow it to fall into disrepair. That is something that he's going to stop. Talking about earning more, he believes that his main focus has to be on agriculture, because close to 60% of Ghanaians are doing agri-related activity. And we perhaps have to, and he said that he wants to treat most of these, what he calls the tree crops. President Kufuor has set up the Tree Crop Development Authority. So crops like rubber,
coconut,
mango, cashew, even shea, even maize, which we are not taking seriously. We should be able to guarantee the farmer a price at the gate, like we've guaranteed the cocoa farmers. You understand? And his way of improving that, and also, in a sense, subsidizing and helping them, is to develop this district agric mechanization centers. Make sure that there are common user facilities, to support our farmers, to become more commercial and more modern. And that, once we can increase that productivity, there's a value chain. Processing facilities in those locations. I've never understood why Nkrumah will put the cocoa processing in Tema. No cocoa grows in Tema. I'd rather have it in Hohoi or Sefi or Jaso, because all over the world Communities are built out of economic activity. In fact, if you look at these Agenda 111 hospitals that are being built, it's going to spawn a lot of economic activity around those areas because doctors, nurses, they have children, they have to go to school, food business and all that. If it is all harnessed properly, and that's what he intends to do. That value chain, we have to look at each step within the chain to identify the weakest link. And I believe that that will happen. And because we are now formalizing the economy and bringing everybody on board into an ecosystem, a lot more people will contribute. He intends to sanitize the tax system, make it simple and flat, so that everybody would like to pay. If it is reasonable, most people like to pay. Businessmen don't want to cut the corners. It's just that the tax system is so complex, you are at the mercy of the customs officer. But if you know what you are supposed to pay and it's reasonable, you pay. And I think that will allow more revenue to be generated and will create the kind of fiscal space that we need. And he's also talked about freeing up about a percentage of our GDP to the private sector. For instance, you go to Legon or Tech, a lot of the hostels now are private owned. Why not the secondary schools? We know secondary schools, every school needs a bus. Why should government have all that money, boom, before you go? You shouldn't do that. We can lease it. We can get a private person, supply 700 buses. We'll pay over a period. And it brings me to the credit thing that he talks about. People don't understand. They are talking about the score. That is not it. The score is just an indication of your credit worthiness. The whole thing is, you go, both of you have lived outside. When you are outside, you talk to your friend, I have a house, I have a car, I have this. It doesn't mean the same as in Ghana. In Ghana, when you say you have a house, you really have a house.
Look at my carpet that I paid 2% of the value for. Yes,
that's right. So, but that's they've been able to get that system working, and it helps the society. Young people come out of school, once they have a job, the things that they need, they can have immediately, and then work to pay. In the meantime, they enjoy the facility. So if it's a car that you need, you are given the car. You pay a little deposit, and then you pay over 6 years or 7 years. Okay? Housing. Every Ghanaian, everybody wants to eventually have a house or build something, however small. So what we do is we waste our money on rent. Does not then impact on anything. Then we have to do strange things at our workplaces so that we can have money to go and buy a plot.
What do you mean by strange things?
The corruption that everybody is talking about. Once we can make sure that people can have access to their life needs early in life, because that's what has sorted out the developed world. Young people come out of school, they have an apartment, they have a car, they have, and they pay. And it makes them serious at work because they know once they lose their job, their mortgage is in trouble.
Yeah.
So the attitude to work changes. It brings everything together. So for someone to even think about that, Dr. Bawumia, in the book that he wrote in 2010, when he was an Oxford scholar, and to say, look, Kwabena, this is the time for us to do this thing. We have to make sure we have a credit system. The practice where everything you need, you have to pay cash down. It's a cash economy. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. So even the thinking, that's why I think he's intellectually deeper and stronger than his opponent, because he's thinking about things, how to shape things. He's a problem solver, and that is the kind of leader we need. You may not be able to achieve all the goals, but at least the direction is good. He's deep in thought. And I think he's the kind of leader that we need to inspire the younger generation. The materialism that has gripped Ghanaians, especially our young politicians. It's, when I see Nanaya and I remember his dad, who was my mentor, JH, very selfless, public-spirited, intelligent individuals. And I was honored to be the one to introduce him in Legon. I still keep that video.
Okay.
That's the kind of spirit we need to imbibe in Ghanaians. We need that reorientation. Our understanding of governance, politics, is about what I call the triple S. And that's why I identify with Dr. Bawumia. It's about service, it's about sacrifice, it's about being a selfless person. If you don't have those tenets, Don't get near politics. Go into business. So we need a critical mass of like-minded people around Dr. Bawumia. And I do think that Ghana is a country where people are reasonably law-abiding. Once they see that the leadership are leading by example, doing the right things, they'll pick the signal. And within 2-3 years, you can see major changes in the way we do things in our country. Look at our urban environment. It's atrocious how we live. I mean, I can't use any other word. It's a fact. Planning schemes don't work. Public spaces are abused. We have to enforce order and discipline. It has to be done gradually. You can't do everything go clear. No, we've got to communicate with the stakeholders, have a discussion, and plan how we'll regenerate the inner city, reduce the urban sprawl. Why are people having to live in Oyarifa and come and work in the ministries? And there are spaces in Adabraka and many spaces that we can get our architects to re-engineer. So it's how visionary the leader we have is. And I get that in Dr. Bawumia, the way he directed us on the manifesto. I know that he's thinking about those things, the urban living, improving livelihoods for the ordinary Ghanaian. That is very important. No wonder we started the pilot with the EV buses. That can reduce the cost of transportation. Those are very important landmark, even for the fishermen too. We are trying the solar power batteries.
To get away from
those things. I see innovative, new thinking. And that is good for Ghana. So Mahama has been given his opportunity. He didn't use it well. He was kicked out in historically big margin. Bawumia has not been president before. I think Ghanaians should grant him that benefit of doubt, whatever it is. That given what he's been able to do with his position as vice president, the ideas that he's espousing, I think he's a better fit for this country, for our future, and that the young people can invest their future into his hands.
So, Kwabena Agyepong, sounding very bullish there, as you said, the mindset of possibilities.
That's right.
Selflessness, sacrifice, service, the 3 S's that you believe Dr. Bawumia presents. We'll be interested to, we hope, hear from you over the course of the election weekend to find out what the tough spots are as the results come rolling in. But thank you for presenting that very full picture of candidate Bawumia going into the 7th of December.
I want to encourage all genuine Ghanaians, patriots, put your hands on your chest and know that you have a leader who will lead us into a new chapter. And let's give him the opportunity. Let's all vote massively for the elephant, Dr. Bawumia, and our MPs.
As Barack Obama would say, there is no such thing as a vote that does not count.
Every vote
Get
counts.
out and count. But a final